Hi, this is Skavlem, and I am going to go through questions one by one. I hope that this helps you with your interview. Your first question is, what makes you a good graphic designer? That's such a great question. Part of it is, I'm going to answer it in three parts, okay? The first thing is the time that you put in. You have to learn the skills so that your eye, which is probably what you have, what makes you think about like going into graphic design, is that you have a good eye for good design. It's going to take a while for your skills to match that eye, and that's okay. For me, I started doing graphic design in 1999. You probably weren't born yet, and Photoshop had, I think, 6 things it could do. There wasn't a lot going on with the design world with the digital design, but I kind of learned as I went. I was on the job as an intern, and I was on a web team, and part of what made me a good graphic designer is learning on the job. Um, Now you can learn in school and school assignments, and that's great. You can get a lot of the technical stuff. But when you design for another person or with a team, um, what you learn is it's not about you. It's about what your message is and how your graphic can convey that message, and they work together. So skill set is number one. Number two is the time that it takes for that skill set. So those kind of go together. I think the hours that I heard is 10,000 hours to learn any new skill. It's a long time, but every 10,000 hours can be broken up into 1 hour increments. So as long as you can put in that time, it might take a few years, but you can do it. Um, the next thing is keeping an open mind. So even though you're developing this mindset of, I need the skills, I have a good eye, design is so subjective. Somebody might love an idea and another person hate the idea. And it's not personal. It's just that there are two different ideas. It's very subjective. And some people gravitate toward that one idea, and some people gravitate toward the other idea. And it might be you. One day you might gravitate toward one idea, and the other day a different idea. And that's okay. And so keeping an open mind means staying curious. That will always help you become a good designer, because the tools are going to change. The trends are always going to change. That's why they're trends. But staying curious and keeping an open mind helps you learn and discover more along the way. That third part is learning to work alone and on a team. I know these are further questions along the way, but both of those things help you become a better designer. So if you want to become a graphic designer, do some things on your own, and then collaborate with another designer or another person who's not a designer and say, let's make something together. Some of the best designs I've made have been made with non-designers who are like, hey, I have an idea. And even though it's not something that I would have come up with, it's something that they want to try. They just don't have the skill set. And so you get to collaborate and become something completely new, a different message, a different audience, a different project than you would ever have taken on by yourself. So that's those 3 things that will help you become a better designer. The skill and time that it takes for you to learn that skill. Staying curious with an open mind, and being able to work together with somebody who you probably would not have without the graphic design as a medium. So working alone and working together. I hope that makes sense. All right, your strengths and weaknesses. These you learn along the way, but what I've decided that a lot of people don't talk about is your strengths and weaknesses are both strengths and weaknesses. What I mean by that is you might have a skill that is a skill in a certain situation that can be a weakness in a different situation. And I wrote about this in a blog post called The Gift of Our Faults. So if you go to designs.do/shop talk, scroll down to this green one right here. It talks about how our faults might actually be a gift in disguise. So you should read that. It talks about the whole thing. So I'm not going to answer it there. But the main thing is to know we all have a long ways to go. to learn things. But just because somebody doesn't like how you act or tell you you're too much or so many things, it might just be you haven't found the place where those things are important or needed. So keep on being yourself. Okay, number 3, describe a time when you had a conflict at work. Ooh, this is a good one. So much of design work is actually all about communication. So I write about this again in Shop Talk under designsthatdo.com/shop talk. You scroll down to this one where the car's on fire. Somebody's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Somebody's car is on fire. It's called Everything's Fine. It's about practicing uncomfortable conversations to create business relationships in a community that values stoicism. That's a lot of big words, but basically it means how to have uncomfortable conversations is a huge life skill that you're going to need no matter what. Even if you're a designer that's like, I like to work alone. Well, guess what? You like to work alone, but if you're a designer that wants to make money, you have to actually talk to other people. And you have to talk to other people who are like, I love this design, but my board hates this design, so we're not going to go with you. And then you have to say, great, but you still owe me money for the time that I put in. And that's a very uncomfortable conversation. It's something that just happened to me this last month. The person that I was working with ended up paying me, and they were very happy to do it. So that's very cool. But I had to ask, and that was an uncomfortable conversation. So it's not a conflict, but I find that most things that we create in our mind as big conflicts are just because we don't know how to talk to each other. And talking to each other takes practice. So you can do it. Just practice. What quality and skills should a great graphic designer have? This depends on who you are and where you're going to be working. It really, really depends. So many people have so many different skills, and sometimes you have a really good designer with great technical skills who is terrible at talking to people. That's okay. Talking to people is a skill. And again, you can learn a skill with 10,000 hours, so you can do anything. A really great graphic designer should be willing to design something and then let it go. That's very hard. It takes a long time to learn that. But most graphic designers, like a good 50%, stop being graphic designers because they can't take the criticism. And they can't take the criticism because they feel like when somebody's attacking their work or dissecting their work or saying, I like this idea over here better than your idea, that they're attacking them as a person. And that's just not true. It feels that way, but it's not true. And so getting past that is something that good graphic designers can do. If it's something that you want to do, you can learn it by reading up on conflict resolution. You could do it. Okay. Do you work better alone or with a group? If you read any of my online reviews, so if you Google Skavlem Designs, all of these reviews, got 19 reviews, they all basically boil down to Sue listens to what I say and then makes what I wanted or what I didn't know I wanted because she listened to me. So I think of graphic design as co-creating with every single client. It's something that, again, is a skill that takes some time to learn. But once you have the basic design skills, the next way to level up is to get the people skills. Something that had to be learned. And I'm still very awkward and uncomfortable with people sometimes. And I just call it out. And I'm like, hey, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Or, hey, I just said this and it was very awkward. Let's move on. And it's great. You just learn as you go. So I work better with people and on my own because I've had to learn. How do you incorporate feedback into designs? Feedback is a very important process of the design part for me. How I work is instead of getting an infinite number of changes, first of all, they'll sit down at the very beginning. So it's like pre-feedback. is when I listen to what people actually want and where they're going to use this design. How is this design going to help them? Is it just going to be a brand? Which I say just, but a brand is a way to let people know who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it to the right people at the right time. So it's kind of big. But it's a little bit different than I need this graphic to help me sell this product, which is completely different because you have to tell a story of this product is going to solve this problem for these people. And I need this graphic to show that. It's a completely different way of designing than I made this pretty thing. How can I apply it to your problem? So my feedback is I get pre-feedback of where are you actually going to use this? How's it going to represent you? And then during the process, I say you get 2 free back and forths is what I call them, where I show you something and then you make a change and then I make that change. And then I show you something and then you say, can we change this? And I make that change. After that, I charge an hourly rate of $200 an hour. Yeah, that's right. It happens. People still want changes, and that's okay. But they also know the value of those changes. And at this point, I've listened to them, so I'm not just like making stuff. I'm making stuff that they need. So that's how I incorporate feedback. Again, that pre-feedback, then the process feedback. So again, that 2 rounds. And then at the very end, when they have the product and they're so happy, when they're riding that high of, I love this, I can't wait to use this, or check this out, this is on my website now. I send them a survey and a link to my Google reviews. And as you can see, I've got 19 reviews, 4.9, which is great. Had one person leave me 4 stars. No comments, that's fine. But that is how I get feedback too. So I always try to send it to people who I know had a great experience, but I also let other people know that, if they didn't, I would like to make it right with them. Or, I just ask people all the time during it how it's going. And I think that helps quite a bit. Why did you choose to become a graphic designer? That is a great question too. I don't know if I choose the graphic design life. It chose me. I started out as an intern in 1999, and I got drafted into an IT department, and during an actual intern draft where different departments bid on you, and I got put into an IT department full of all these boys, and they were like, "Hey, we're starting up this new thing. It's called a web team. And we're going to put these graphics with this text, and it's all going to link together, and it'll look really cool." And I was like, cool, I can turn on a computer. That's all I knew how to do. So when I say the graphic design life chose me, I really mean it chose me. I started out doing database stuff, and what I learned on that web team is whatever you do that's graphically created, it's great if it looks pretty, but if it does something, it becomes a heavy lifter. It becomes like a lever, which is the simplest machine that you can have, right? If you have a fulcrum and if you have a heavy load over here, you can shift it so that it's easier to move. That's what the lever and the fulcrum system is about. Anyways, that's how graphic design was explained to me. Is graphic design helps the brain process a whole lot of information by packing it into one simple thing that your brain just goes, oh yeah, I get that concept. That's cool. Because people don't like to read. But if you give them a picture with the words, or a picture that does something that actually moves the situation so that they either want to buy a product or they want to know more about you, then you're helping to shape the conversation. So I learned how to do graphic design from very smart people. My boss worked at Intel. My fellow coworkers went on to work for NASA. And I learned from them how to do the behind the scenes, how to look at what pictures actually do, and how to work on a team and by myself. I hope that answers all your questions. And if you think graphic design sounds interesting, you should start working on projects by yourself and with people.